Hey Manning here. Welcome to late night edition of the Garden Report. We are here with DaMichael Cole from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. I think we've had you on here
Yep.
once before, DaMichael. Welcome back. And we got a ton to talk about between the Celtics and the Grizzlies. Uh, just about a week ago. Not as well, yeah. There was huge surprise on both sides. I would say
Mhm.
this trade going down, despite probably some signs that not only Tyus Jones would move, which I think there was more rumblings about, but the Celtics sat in position to make a big shakeup after going down 3-0 in the East Finals and losing Game 7 and falling short of the finals last year. And they made that move by trading Marcus Smart here, who's going to play a substantial part in Memphis's future. It seems fitting. I didn't even know, DeMichael, that a ton of people are making the comparison
Yeah, the
the
TA.
the Tony Allen addition in Memphis and Marcus Smart, same age, but I never knew same college.
Same college. Yep.
Tony Allen coming out of Oklahoma State and the Boston Celtics to make a major impact on Memphis. And let's start there. What's the mood in Memphis on this trade? Because they do give up a good player in Tyus
Yeah.
Jones, but I think an exciting player coming back in Marcus Smart.
Well, I think people are happy from the saving perspective of it. The Grizzlies kind of worked some magic in a way from the perspective of they need to replace Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones. But you look at kind of what the Celtics are going to, come close to here in the near future. Same thing with the Grizzlies from a cap perspective. Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant are closely getting to the point where they're going to occupy most of the cap, and the Grizzlies are going to go into the luxury tax. Grizzlies haven't been into the luxury tax for a long time. So with that being said, uh, acquiring Marcus Smart in a way killed knocked out two birds with one stone for the Grizzlies because they got their wing defender, which they were aiming to replace with Dylan Brooks, and they also got a guy who can potentially run the point guard with the second unit and Smart as well. So that's kind of how they look at it in terms of, hey, they're going to pay him 19 million, but you'd probably been paying 30 upwards of 30 million to get two players to fill those same roles. So I think that's the good part, but there is some caution too. I mean, as I was asking you a couple days ago, like Grizzlies fans, when they saw the Marcus Smart edition, there was some, okay, can he guard the Kevin Durant, the Kawhi Leonards, the Lukas? Because that's who you're gonna have to beat in Memphis to get, to where the Grizzlies want to go. And Dylan Brooks fared, decently well against those guys. And now Marcus Smart, as the roster is currently constructed, he's gonna get those matchups. And I think people want to know if he can be the guy that's going to take on those assignments and win those matchups, at least, hold those guys below their averages.
So how'd this end up coming together for Memphis? Because
Mm-hmm.
you have to think, so obviously everyone knows what happened on the Celtics side here. The Brogdon
Mm-hmm.
trade falls apart. They
Yeah.
have until midnight to get Kristaps to opt into that contract, and they need to find a third team, I guess, to compensate Washington because Washington probably wanted nothing to do with Brogdon's contract. Brian Windhorst said that probably no teams want
Yeah.
anything to do with that contract given his injury status right now. So they weren't going to be able to reroute him. I can't imagine that the Celtics picked up the phone at 10:30 for the first time with the
No. No.
Grizzlies and and said, you guys interested in Smart? Like, let's work this out. This had to be a conversation going back some amount of time here. And it makes me wonder if the Celtics did get that first deal done, would something have still been on the table with Memphis here and Marcus Smart? Because I have to imagine
Mm-hmm.
this conversation happened prior, and when the
Oh
Brogdon
yeah.
thing fell apart at 10:30, Boston goes back to Memphis and revisits conversations previously had about Smart.
Oh yeah. Memphis has had interest in Marcus Smart, so it kind of leads me to believe that the Celtics knew that the Grizzlies had interest in Marcus Smart, but it shows that the Celtics didn't want to let Marcus Smart go. Once everything fell through with Brogdon, it, they clearly really wanted Kristaps Porzingis, and the next option, for that to happen was you had to let go of Marcus Smart. The Grizzlies, he's a guy who they like as a wing defender, and as I said, that is probably the top priority that the Grizzlies had this offseason in replacing, Dillon Brooks and getting another guy who can play on the wing, but probably, from a different offensive impact perspective. And that's what the Grizzlies are hoping to get in Marcus Smart.
Yeah, and what happened with Tyus Jones here? And we'll get to the
Mm-hmm.
Celtics perspective in a little bit, but I am curious about this because he
Yeah.
comes back. He was obviously going to be a tough guy to retain because he was playing behind Ja and doing so well in those situations when Ja would miss time that you would think another team would look at him and give him starting level money, give him starting level opportunity.
Yep.
And he ended up going back to Memphis on a solid deal that I thought, would keep him there for a little bit longer. But you start hearing those reports, those rumblings a couple weeks ago that he was looking for a little bit more opportunity, even with Ja missing time with the suspension. We got to talk about that as well. But it looks to me like he kind of pushed his way out of here a little bit, and he ends up in Washington in this deal, a spot where he's going to be able to play a ton, score a ton, really show what he's made of. I mean, he might be that team's best player right now, left over once all the dust settled there. But how did this, like you mentioned, Smart being viewed as a wing defender? He's obviously going to be that point guard too.
Yeah.
Not only Ja Morant's place initially, but also Tyus
Mm-hmm.
Jones' place as that backup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's the thing about the Grizzlies roster. Last 2 seasons, number 2 seed, 50+ wins, but they haven't been a good shooting team. They've been pretty average. And at times, they look below average shooting 3-pointers. Teams, when they played the Grizzlies this season, when you talk about a starting lineup of Ja, Dez, Dillon Brooks, Jaren, and then Steven Adams, Xavier Tillman, whoever the center is, there's only one player in that starting lineup that teams really respect from 3-point range, and that's Desmond Bane. Jaren Jackson Jr. shot above league average this season from 3-point range, but him taking threes is what teams prefer more so than him, being the dominant force he can be from the inside. So that's the only guy, Desmond Bane, that you worry about from the 3-point line. The Grizzlies went out this last season. Their biggest priority was getting shooting. They drafted 4 guys who were above 35% from 3-point range in college. Then, on top of that, they go at the trade deadline. The notable move was getting Luke Kennard, one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. He got to Memphis, had a big role. But now that leads us to the Ja Morant suspension, right? When Ja gets suspended, it's clear that the Grizzlies have a guy in Luke Kennard that they could potentially put in a lineup. But the only way that you put Luke Kennard and Desmond Bane on the floor together, because Luke Kennard will basically be replacing, Dillon Brooks in that role. The only way you put those guys on the floor together is you get another wing defender. And that's where Marcus Smart comes into play. He's not your natural small forward per se, but having Marcus Smart in the starting lineup allows the Grizzlies to start Luke Kennard alongside of Desmond Bane, if that's what they choose to do. Now, alongside of Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams, you got 2 of the league's best 3-point shooters. So that's kind of the bonus of getting Marcus Smart. Because going back to Tyus, if you still keep Tyus, I know pretty much for a fact the Grizzlies are not going to start Tyus Jones alongside of Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard. They start Tyus Jones, they start Dez, but they probably opt for one of the young, second-year guys to start at small forward and bring Luke Kennard off the bench. It was the same thing that happened in the playoffs. In the playoffs, a lot of people were asking Taylor Jenkins the question, why didn't he go Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Xavier Tillman? Instead, he was going with Dillon Brooks because of the defense on LeBron James. He said that they only wanted to have one guy that they had to, that they deemed was not a guy they wanted to switch onto LeBron, and that was Ja Morant. Everyone else, kind of like the Celtics, they wanted to switch everything else. And if you get Luke Kennard and Tyus Jones in the same lineup, you can't do that. So that's kind of where the impact of Marcus Smart kind of kicks in, because now you're talking about the Grizzlies being a much better shooting team on paper than each of the last 2 seasons.
What do you think that starting lineup's going to look like without Ja in there initially? Something like Smart, Bane, that 3 spots where it keeps getting tricky for me, because you probably go Jackson Adams at the 4 and the 5, right? And then
For
who's
sure.
the 3?
Right now, I think it's Kennard, and that's because what they're going to do, it's the Marcus Smart effect, so to speak.
Yeah.
What they're going to do is, if you're playing the Suns one night, you're just going to switch Marcus Smart down there on Devin Booker. Or if you're playing the Mavs, you're just going to put him on Luka, put him on the ball. And if you're playing whatever the team may be, he's going to get the best wing assignment. They're going to give that to Marcus Smart. It's not, he's guarding point guards, he's guarding shooting guards. It's not Luke Kennard's guarding point guards, guarding shoot guards. They're going to put him on the most impactful guy from the perimeter, kind of like what they did with Dylan Brooks. So that's kind of the role he's getting. And then Luke Kennard, you'll see him guarding like the spot-up shooters and things like that. So it kind of works out from that way.
Yeah, for sure. So they're in an interesting spot because obviously I think the guy they wanted to go all in on, and it just ended up being too expensive, was OG Anunoby, and
Yeah.
that would have been a great fit. He fits
Mm-hmm.
that wing spot. He would have completed this lineup in a way that's more coherent, I think, 1 through 5. They're looking
Yeah.
a little smaller to me, 1 through 3, and we'll get to that in a minute here. But obviously last year, the Dylan Brooks thing blows up. The Ja thing blows up several times. Steven Adams gets hurt, which was a huge deal that I don't think a lot of people gave enough credit to.
Yeah.
Kanari comes in. He has to figure out what he's doing there. There's not enough time quite to integrate him effectively. And then it's just a lot of young guys. Clark tears his Achilles too. So it's just this disastrous year in Memphis, despite them finishing with the 2nd seed. And it almost feels like that step back's going to take a little bit into this year too, depending on how some of these young guys step up, depending on what Smart's immediate impact is. You're going to be without Ja for 25 games here, and who knows how he's reintegrated and how long that might take. Brooks is gone, and that's still like the craziest thing ever to me is that like I can truly say that's the first time I've ever seen a situation like that where the reporting is goodbye, see you, you're not coming back under any circumstances, which was just crazy. And then, we'll see how the different lineups and stuff come together here. But where are they at, you think, in the grand scheme? Is this year just going to sort of be trying to reset and just get everything settled? Or is this team looking at taking a serious step this year, despite Clark probably missing some time here, Morant missing some time, definitely, Brooks being gone, and Smart just stepping in the door for the first time?
Yeah, they want to compete. They want to compete for the top. I still, if you ask me what I think there's still one more move to be made. They still have one more roster spot open. The GM, Zach Kleiman, said not to expect anything too groundbreaking was the word that he used for that final roster spot. But I think that roster spot is a bit key into determining how far they go because the West is loaded. Between the Nuggets, between the Suns, the Clippers being healthy, whatever that looks like, or the Lakers, the West is loaded. The Grizzlies are firmly in the thick of that. They've won 50-plus games the last 2 seasons. And you mentioned a big part. No one pretty much dominates the Grizzlies on the boards when Steven Adams is active. And if you saw that series against the Lakers, they were just the little brothers. I mean, the Lakers own the glass. Anthony Davis owned the glass. And sure, Anthony Davis is going to get his, but that just doesn't happen to the same degree with Steven Adams in the lineup. So I believe there's some belief in Memphis. Like, hey, if we get a guy like Steven Adams back healthy, you get Ja back, now you integrate Marcus Smart, give you some fourth quarter lineup flexibility there where you can go Luke Kennard, certain situations you go Marcus Smart, you can go Bane, Smart, you can, however you want to do it. It gives them more flexibility than in the past. And I think because of that, they're firmly in the thick of it right now, but it's going to be tough. The West is loaded.
Where would you rank them just today before we see the whole picture?
Man, I would say firmly second tier, third, fourth, because and here's the thing. I think the Nuggets they're the champions. They deserve to be respected. They are number one. It's them. And then there's this race. I mean, I think the Lakers right now, you have to respect, but a lot of decisions have to be made there with Austin Reeves, with Rui Hachimura, and whatever else they have to move over there. But the Lakers, I would put up there if they re-sign those guys, make a couple moves. I think there are couple other teams. OKC is going to be on the rise. The Pelicans healthy Zion. I mean, can't
they were in that finals mix, yeah.
Yeah, they were a top 2, top 3 seed when Zion got hurt. So I think a lot of teams are in that tier, but I think the Grizzlies are firmly behind those 2 teams. I think the Suns can be above the Lakers, right up there, right behind the Nuggets, but I got to see how the Suns feel the rest of their roster. I just can't. It's incomplete right now. You're talking about 6 guys, 6 roster spots right now, so they got to fill up like 9 more spots. So still a little bit early to tell on the Suns, but I think the Grizzlies are firmly in that second tier, basically a move or two away. They're right there.
I want to talk Ja and Smart, those two coming together here, because I do find that interesting.
Yeah,
And then we'll get to some Celtics talk later.
yeah.
I want your impressions of what this looks like on the Boston end. But I'm looking at FanDuel right now. Of course, our official sports wagering partner here at CLNS Media. Grizzlies coming in 10th in the hierarchy of championship favorites in the betting odds right now. Tied for 9th with the Clippers at plus 2,300. That puts them 4th or 5th among teams in the West. Still a lot of Lakers love. We'll see what that picture ends up looking like. Warriors still 2nd, despite the Poole trade and Paul being a interesting fit out there. So things looking outside of Denver wide open right now in that West for that second spot. Phoenix, Golden State, LA, Memphis, LA, the Clippers, all in that top 10 range of NBA championship favorites. And you can bet on that and more. Baseball, of course, what's going on right now, it's in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 right here in Mass. Where they've been rolling for a couple months now. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel.com/Boston. Join today. Don't miss your chance to snag that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you head over to FanDuel today. That's FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. MLB trademarks used with permission. All right, so Ja, we haven't talked about this, DaMichael, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this whole saga here. The 2 suspensions, this one hefty. Some thought it'd be more, some thought maybe too much in this situation, but
Yeah.
clearly, even I think the GM came out there and said, this is appropriate. There's obviously got to be some, adjustment here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Figure out how to get them right and back. And it's tricky to talk about because we really don't even know the problem here. Obviously, people have speculated quite a bit on the mental health of Ja Morant here. Some have said he's just acting a fool. And so I don't know exactly what the issue is here, what he needs to solve, but it's clear he can't keep waving these guns around and stay on the court for this team and be a face of the league. So how are you looking at his situation here, his status as the star of this team into the future, and what's it going to take for him to come back and be a stable leader for this group?
Yeah, as his GM put it, it's all on Ja. That's where it is right now. He's got the support from his teammates. He's got the support from the front office. They're putting the resources around him to help him be a better person, be a better player. The NBA is doing the same thing, right? The NBA has put these thresholds that haven't been made public, but it was very clear, through listening to Adam Silver talk in the lead up to this decision that the league wanted to put an emphasis on helping Ja Morant, the person, improve just as much or even more than the point of discipline him for making a repeated mistake. So I think that's a big part of it. Where does he go from here? I think this will be a good lesson from him because now he has to watch and not watch for 8 games. He has to watch for 25 games. And it's the beginning of the season. So instead of coming back and returning in October, he's not going to be able to play until December, somewhere around mid-December. So it's a good lesson for him. Ja's going to be 24 when he gets back on the floor. So he's still, very young in NBA years. I think with a guy like, Marcus Smart getting in the locker room now, Steven Adams, Tyus is gone. Tyus was someone that he really respected as well. But those guys being in the locker room right now, especially Steven Adams, Marcus Smart being that new voice who can kind of provide some perspective there, I think that'll be really helpful for Ja as well.
Yeah, especially for this team. I think through some of the lows, I remember a few moments last year where Adams was really trying to speak up and get vocal. There were some moments even along the sideline, I think I remember from last year, where he was just, getting into these guys. And that's certainly something Smart's going to do as well. We have, went back and forth talking Smart a couple of days ago, and there were just numerous moments you can think about. The chair throwing incident in the bubble.
Yeah, yeah,
Him calling out Jalen and Jason early in that Ime
yeah,
Udoka year for not passing enough. I mean, he's going to speak his mind in a pretty aggressive way, up to and including saying he could have cracked Joel Embiid's head open after they got in a little scuffle there on opening night last year. I mean, he's a big personality, and this team needs it. I think it's going to go over well with the young players there, and they're probably going to gravitate toward him as a veteran, as a vocal leader. Things got a little weird in Boston, I think, with guys who were clearly above him in the hierarchy still looking up to him in a way as a leader.
Yeah.
And they're sort of being kind of just this weird leadership by committee that I don't think is going to be as much of a problem in Memphis, at least for now. But the Ja thing and Smart playing next to him is going to be interesting to me because this could play really well, and I don't know what the plan's going to be for Ja. Is he going to participate in training camp? Is he going to be around this team at all through the suspension? I'd imagine not, as he tries to figure out what he's going to do here in terms of getting help or whatever he needs to do to get back out there. But once they are ultimately united and get together, I have to really think Smart's going to embrace not only helping him on the court, but off the court too, because I think Smart's made some massive strides from a maturity standpoint. Like you look back at Smart's story, like there's a lot of stuff about him growing up and just like throwing rocks at people and just doing all this crazy stuff. And, I've gotten to know him quite a bit over the last couple of years here, and he really is just this like fully formed, confident and mature individual who's just really actualized himself in a pretty substantial way over a decade in this league now. And, just whatever Ja Morant needs, I have to be certain Smart's going to embrace kind of being that mentor for him in the locker room.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out because you do get the feeling that he's going to embrace that role, being that new voice, being that guy who has 9 years of experience, being the guy who has the type of experience that he has. He's going to be respected in Memphis. I've already seen, Desmond Bane is super excited about this move, so he's already going to have the respect. And then we know Marcus Smart is going to do it with actions as well. I mean, I think you mentioned it, or someone else mentioned it to me about just how this guy like will dive for the basketball, like in preseason games and things like that. So like that is how you earn the respect of your teammates, by more than just saying you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I want to be this guy. You show it. And clearly in his career, he's had no problem putting his body on the line and showcasing those type things. That'll kind of rub off on these guys as well. But I think, there's a good chance that Marcus Smart could be a positive influence for Ja in the locker room, and he could get an extended period of time with him. And I think that's important because, yes, Ja is going to be suspended for the first 25 games, but I think at some point before that 25-game period is up, he's going to be allowed to come around the team, at some point. And once that time window opens up, I'm sure you'll spend, a lot of time with Marcus Smart, and that'll be really helpful for him.
All right, let's get to some Celtics here.
Yeah.
I'll give you my reaction to this trade and what I'm thinking about here from a Celtics perspective, and I want to get yours as well. But I want to throw this in real quick here, and we'll be right back. Trip to the grocery store, skip the chopping, prepping, cleaning up. Just get these prepackaged ingredients.
Yep.
Heat it up, enjoy, and you're back outside to soak in the summer. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, we don't have time to cook. It's the summer. You get out of work.
America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit.
You get out of work, the sun's shining, you get a workout in, you run home, you eat quick, you go back out, you have a couple drinks with your friends. This is the summer. No one's slaving around in the kitchen for 2 hours, trying to, whip this up and whip that up.
You should have seen the lengths I went on friggin', I don't even want to talk about it.
With what? Factor meal? With your meals?
Pies?
Yeah, no, on Father's Day, the amount of friggin' cooking I had to do. Disaster.
You had to cook your own meals?
Yeah.
Is that what you
Look at that.
John, is that you?
Factor meals. Factor shakes.
Oh, we got Factor shakes.
Oh, they got shakes?
Yeah, guys, come on.
I didn't even know.
Get with it.
I knew they had it, but they look good. I'm not a green beans guy personally, but
those bars are great too. You need something quick.
Anyway, go check it out. It's America's
go.
#1 ready-to-eat meal kit.
Toss it in the bag on your way to the gym.
Factormeals.com/garden50. Get 50% off your first box.
There you go, Factor Meals. I got some coming in the mail next week. I'm excited for that. We'll have the other guys back later this week looking ahead to free agency, maybe even tomorrow, but we'll have an update on that. What was your first reaction to this from a Celtics perspective, DaMichael?
I for a while have thought that Tyus Jones would make a lot of sense for the Celtics. So once we initially saw the deal, the first thing that we saw was Tyus Jones being shipped to Washington. And then as the deal materialized and more reporting, the news came out, that's when we learned that Marcus Smart was being shipped to Memphis. And immediately, because of the previous trade that was in the works, you knew it was a 3-team deal. But I was wondering, I was like, man, I'm sure Tyus Jones was a guy we've talked about pretty much, the entire offseason as someone who would make a lot of sense in Boston, but I get it. Kristaps Porzingis, this is an incredible addition for that team. So with the picks, though, the 2 first-round picks, I know everyone immediately started talking about that because on surface level, it's 2 first-round picks, right? But the Grizzlies expected to contend. One of the picks was 25, and then I think next year's the 2024 pick is Golden State's. So that one doesn't have as much to do with the Grizzlies as it does with the Golden State Warriors, who clearly, with the addition of Chris Paul, intend on being, a championship contender this year. So the Celtics have drafted well in the past, so I think they could turn those first round picks into something nice. People were saying, "Oh, did the Grizzlies give up too much?" Well, here's the thing: the way the Grizzlies roster is constructed, we never thought they were going to use the first round pick. I never thought that was an option. It was either trade for a player that they can add to this year's team, or it was trade back into the draft from 25 to 30, 31, 32, and to the early second round. Because quite frankly, the Grizzlies went into the offseason with 14 players on standard contracts. So if you draft the player in the first round, that's another guaranteed contract, and that gets you at 15 players. So clearly this team, as we said earlier, they want to compete for a championship. And last year they drafted 4 guys. They don't want to do that anymore. They're not. They've developed. You look at their entire starting lineup; it's pretty much guys that have been developed around the Grizzlies. That is not the way that they want to kind of continue to grow the team from here. It's about getting guys like Marcus Smart and adding those missing pieces to the locker room. So from the Celtics perspective, it made a lot of sense to me because as I was telling you earlier, seeing that the Celtics are about to have a lot of money tied up to a couple guys, and you're talking about not even luxury tax. You're talking about possibly getting into the second apron for the Celtics sometime here soon. They're going to have to draft well, and now getting those 2 first-round picks, you're talking about potentially getting 2 rotation players for very cheap contracts. So it makes a lot of sense for the Celtics.
Yeah, I need to see the full picture ultimately, and we won't know the full story of this trade until years down the line. And a lot of this stuff does go in steps. Of course, the first pick that they got from Memphis, they ended up trading back for, boatload of seconds.
Yeah.
And, I think they're ultimately going to use those probably to sign and trade Grant, get a TPE, and who knows down the line what they end up getting for that TPE. That's my prediction on the Grant front, which, I think is what everyone's interested in next after this move here. But of course, my heart sank when I saw they traded Smart. I mean, this is a guy like, when I first started blogging about this team in 2015, he was that rookie. He was the fabric who wove throughout the last decade of this team's rise from, a middle of the pack team in the East to that top team in the East by 2017. And they've been there just about ever since with him in that starting lineup, alongside a bunch of different guards there. So this is a real gut punch to Celtics fans, and I think it's going to take some time initially for quite a few to get over it. But he's also, as I wrote to you, one of the most divisive
I
players
noticed that. I noticed that.
in Celtics history. Like half the fan base, I'd have to say, maybe a little bit more than half loved him and wanted him to retire in green and win a championship here and everything else. And quite a few in this chat, and I even remember the early shows we used to do after games. He drove them crazy, whether it was the shot selection or, I don't know, stuff he said or just his overall kind of erratic play, which was a lot more erratic years ago. I think he's really reined things in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Some people thought he was the issue on this team, and I guess we're going to see. Ultimately, I thought the best case for this, and I forget who said it, was that if the Celtics didn't try to shake up this core, they would never know how it was going to go. But
Yeah.
I do think his leadership impact here was real. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a shock that it's not around them when things open up here at training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I do kind of wonder, obviously on paper, this looks like a massive talent upgrade. But another comparison to this deal I would throw out there was that Perkins deal for Jeff Green back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite the same level of players and talent gap there, but similar, I think, in that Smart was a fixture in this locker room. And it's going to be a massive, massive loss in the room, I think, having him out of there. Not to mention in the passing game where I think they've ended up becoming a little bit weak here, and we'll see how Porzingis replaces him. It's
Yeah.
obviously a much different position here, but my gut and my first reaction to this trade was that I didn't love it. I think it's interesting. I think it has the potential to be great, but I also think it has the potential to have some really unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think with Kristaps Porzingis, you get a new look, and I know the passing is a big point of conversation there, but at the end of the day, basketball is a very simple game. It's a very simple game. You identify mismatches, you attack them. The Celtics, one of the reasons they've been really good, despite not being, a Denver Nuggets or Golden State caliber passing team, is because they have players who can attack mismatches and dominate them. Kristaps Porzingis is a guy who pretty much is a walking mismatch. He's 7'3", can shoot over anybody at any given moment. But of course, as you'll see, sometimes people get a little disgruntled with him when he settles, for a mid-range jumper against a 6'5" guard or something like that. So there are going to be those type of moments. But at the end of the day, I think there's the perspective of now when you have that pick and roll with a guy like Jason Tatum and Kristaps Porzingis, they're not going to be as willing to switch that on the other end. It's not Al Horford or Robert Williams, from an offensive perspective. So the simplest form of the game, Kristaps Porzingis, if he's a force, if he's having a season like he had with the Wizards, it's a big win for the Celtics. But at the same time, I like to remind people that yes, he's a really good player they got traded for, but you don't get traded 3 times for no reason at this point of your career. He got traded from the Knicks, and he got traded from the Mavs, and now he got traded from the Wizards. So there are some reasons for that. But at the same time, the role that he's going to have in the Celtics is probably a little bit different than each of those. And in New York, he was pretty much the guy. He goes to Dallas. He doesn't really enjoy his role because you're watching Luka a lot of the time. And then he goes to the Wizards and has kind of like a resurgence in a way. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I like it overall. I think there's I'm big on lineup flexibility. And the Celtics are one of the best teams when it comes to creating those lineup flexibility. We see, sometimes they can throw Derek White, Marcus Smart. You can put Jaylen Brown at the 2, go big, have Robert Williams in there alongside of, Al Horford, whatever the case may be. They're really good with lineup flexibility, but now you could potentially throw this guy at the 5 in certain situations, throw Jaylen Brown out there, Derek White, Brogdon when he's healthy, and I'm looking at that lineup like, I mean, it's child's play. They can have fun out here. So I think it's a move I would have made too if I was the Celtics.
Yeah, I get the appeal here, and this is a guy who could accentuate some of these other players here with the shooting.
Yeah.
The defense, certainly. That's what excites me most here is that he could absolutely thrive in this drop defense that the Celtics play here and become a great rim protector at the point of attack. They were putting Horford in that role quite a bit last year, and he's a little shorter, not as much of a rim protector, a little older, and they just used him so much last year that they needed somebody to help ease his minutes and game load. And you now have 3 guys that I think can effectively load manage each other here. And Porzingis, Lord knows is going to need some of that himself with his injury history here. So that does concern me. I wonder how he will fit in the soccer room. I think there's been some moments early in his career, and he's getting a little bit older now, probably maturing a little bit, where he's butted heads with some teammates. The Dallas situation, I don't think probably went as well as he or them would have loved for it to have gone. You had some off the court stuff in New York that's a little concerning, and
right.
And I think overall it's just a little bit of on the court, the ball stopping. I think the transition for him from, a Washington team that was essentially just letting him cook last year
Yeah,
into a third role. And I think that's the tough, if you're talking about a big three and some of the big threes we've seen, if that's what you consider this year between Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis, the third guy faces the toughest challenge. And I wonder, is Joe going to have him almost exclusively shooting threes as Al Horford did last year? I wouldn't love that. Is he going to be able to get enough touches for him to stay involved and active on defense? Because they're going to need that from him. I think that's going to be the greatest strength he brings to the table here. And then the biggest one by far is the injuries. But they do have, I guess, the depth to sustain an injury to him, but not a major one. And then the biggest thing you're looking at here, and the biggest difference in this trade between Boston and Memphis here, Smart signed for 3 years at $18 million, which is nothing now as this cap keeps going up. Porzingis is an expiring contract. He's about to make close to $40 million a year, and we keep talking about these cap implications here. They have a tough call on this extension. I think they're going to do it, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Man, it's going to be real tough, right? Because we see the second apron, luxury tax rules that'll come into play with the CBA and the new CBA and things like that. And it's some strict penalties. And it's going to be hard to upgrade teams. That's why those first round picks that the Celtics acquired and acquiring even more draft capital going forward is very important, because you're going to need those cheap contracts. You're going to need a Christian Braun like the Denver Nuggets had this past season, or going out and getting a Bruce Brown for pennies on a dollar. You're going to need those type of moves. And right now the Celtics don't need that. They're able to pay Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and Robert Williams gets his extension and whatever the case may be. But it's about to get squeezed a little bit more here. So clearly, I think with the Celtics, you should be championship hungry at this point. Getting to the finals isn't impressive to Boston. Getting to the Eastern Conference Finals sure isn't impressive to Boston at this point. They're in a different tier in terms of that. If the Grizzlies were to make the Western Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals this upcoming season, it would be a huge thing, and people would expect right after that them to be in championship contention. But with the Celtics, they're already there. So if you get a championship this season, the 1 year rental, if it's a rental, it's worth it. But if you don't get a championship, now you got a big decision to make, how this thing is going to work financially going forward. And that's when you kind of get put in a tough position.
Definitely. That's my biggest question, is how they're going to make this work from a money perspective. And they might be one of these teams like Phoenix who says, screw it.
Yeah.
let's go above that line. They haven't shied away from tossing away future picks here. They've pretty much tossed away every future pick they've had under Brad Stevens as they've approached, including trading back from 25 here for future seconds. And I think teams are a little bit more intrigued by second rounders here. Of course, Memphis added Gigi Jackson in this draft, who I'm sure they're excited about.
Yeah.
The Celtics, Jordan Walsh, I have never seen the Celtics parade around a second round pick and roll out the green carpet like they did for him this week. I went to 2 events that he was at, and they gave him a full press conference, and they're thrilled. This is a guy who was picked at number 38 overall. So these talent pools in these drafts keep getting deeper, and you almost wonder if second rounders will become close to the value of first rounders, just because you can almost get equal talent there. Obviously not at the top end, but there are many drafts where it feels like guys from 20 to 50 aren't that far apart.
Because it's just the development of basketball at this point, and then the way the game is being played. Like, I feel like now you have a lot of these guys who come in, they're playing basketball so much growing up now that they're more ready, like day one. You're not having to throw guys, in the G League for 50 games. You can get a guy in the second round or late in the first round who can come in and be an impact player, off the bench. I mean, the Grizzlies had an undrafted player, Kenneth Lofton Jr., didn't play pretty much most of the season, gets one start at the end of the regular season and scores, 42 points, I think it was, 42 points, 15 rebounds. So it's like there is some value there with these second round undrafted guys, but it's also with the flexibility that you gain from it. Like in the Celtics case, you have guys who can play on the ball really well. You're probably not going to get that in the second round too many times. You're not going to get those type of players who can be great elite shot
A
creators.
great point.
But you get those good role players. You can get a guy, hey, look, we just need you to play great defense. You were the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. You're the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Go play great defense. Knock down that shot when Jason Tatum kicks it out to you, or Jaylen Brown kicks it out to you, and guess what? You've got a great role. Grant Williams, great example. Just knock down corner 3-pointers, play great solid defense on your opponents, and you're going to get paid. So I think that's a great way to look at it.
I'm sure you still follow quite a bit of college basketball down there. Are you familiar with Jordan Walsh at all? And, of course, G.G. Jackson as well coming in here.
Mm-hmm.
These two pair of second-rounders that, to me, and there were quite a few second-rounders I liked. I was looking at that more initially, obviously, because the Celtics didn't have a first-round pick coming into this.
Yeah.
But these two guys, to me, are more the intriguing second-rounders who went because of Walsh's physicality and length, 7'3" wingspan, and G.G. Jackson's pedigree is one of the top high school players coming out of his class before an uneven season in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I saw the coverage of Jordan Walsh today, but I wasn't really too familiar with his game overall. I've seen the main thing that stood out to me is pretty much just what you said, just seeing that the guy's 7'3" wingspan. There's some position versatility there. And I mean, that's the name of the game for the Celtics, I think. They love those versatile guys. So he kind of fits that mold. But with G.G. Jackson, in terms of the Grizzlies, I think he's it's a different case scenario because the Grizzlies just drafted him. They're going to put him on a two-way. And the idea pretty much is to develop him. The roster's pretty much set. Again, they had 14 standard contracts already up. So that 15th roster spot is going to go to someone likely in free agency. And G.G. Jackson is their developmental piece. He's the youngest guy in the draft. He's still 18. He's younger than Bronny James. Bronny James is older than him because that's the initial class that he was in. But he's a draft and develop guy, has all the talent in the world. But yeah, I'm interested in seeing how this thing plays out for these second-round guys.
Absolutely. I want to get to your guy, Grant Williams, who I talked to today, who's entering free agency this weekend. I want to get some thoughts on him and what the Celtics might do with him here, what his future might be before we wrap up the show here. But one more break before we wrap this up.
I want to talk about our next partner here on the Garden Report, and that is Athletic Greens. It's a product I started taking literally every day since AG started working with us here at the Garden Report. I use it because I want everything that AG has to offer: better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system. I didn't want to chase a bunch of pills and vitamins. I just wanted to have one supplement that did it all for me, and that's exactly what Athletic Greens does. So what exactly is it? What are you doing when you're taking Athletic Greens or AG1? You are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins and minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens that help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports, as I mentioned, gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, all those good things. So again, get into AG1 right now. It's lifestyle friendly, it's diet friendly, no matter what you're on right now. Paleo, gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, it really doesn't matter. AG1 fits with your diet. It actually has less than 1 gram of sugar. It's a highly endorsed product, over 7,000 5-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts, and AG1 is a supplement for you. So again, it's time to reclaim your health, arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens and us here at the Garden Report are going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/garden. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/garden to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
So the next big question for the Celtics is Grant Williams. You obviously were at Tennessee at the same time as him. I'm sure you tracked his career closely since. He's been a great Celtic for 4 years here through his rookie deal. I talked to him today. He said he wants to come back.
Mhm.
Said he'll be more than happy to come back. He knows it's tricky because of the CBA, and this Porzingis edition
Right.
makes things even trickier. Thinks he can play in that mix in the front court, and he didn't play a ton this year either. But it feels like to me within the next couple of days into this free agency class here, we could be talking about Grant leaving Boston. That's my read on it. Do you think they should look to keep him though?
I mean, they should look to keep him, yes, but it financially it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If I'm Grant Williams, I want a contract with some years on it. I want some longevity here, and I don't know if that's something the Celtics, with the future in terms of what you're going to have committed to Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the Kristaps Porzingis decision that you're going to have to make. It's going to be really tough. So it's a numbers game. At the end of the day, that's what this new CBA is designed to do. It's kind of designed to eliminate the idea of building these super teams where you can give 6 or 7 or 8 guys more than 10 million per year, or I guess 15 million per year would be the new number, or something like that. But that's kind of what it's designed to do. So from an emotional standpoint and a logical standpoint of what he brings on the basketball floor, it definitely makes sense to bring him back. But at the same time, there are going to be other suitors out there. I mean, Grant Williams is a solid player. There are going to be other suitors out there that say, "Hey, we want to offer him, 3 years, whatever that number may be," and the Celtics are just going to have to say, "Look, I mean, we want you back. We can offer you this, but we can't offer you that." And I think that's going to be the situation, and he's going to have to choose. As you said, he's very knowledgeable of the CBA. He knows how that works. So he's not a guy that you're going to game, that type of thing. It's hard to see it happening. I think the Celtics have put themselves in position, with a lot of these moves that they've made. Kristaps Porzingis being the main one, they're in position to kind of navigate through that. But it's hard for me to see him coming back just because of the current roster construction, the future. The main thing is it's similar to the Tyus Jones situation in a way, not directly similar, but you were talking about Tyus Jones earlier. We kind of always knew, even though it wasn't reported out loud as much, we knew that Tyus Jones would likely be shipped because as the Grizzlies go into this next era here where Ja's going to be on a max, Desmond Bane is potentially going to get a max contract. Jaren Jackson Jr. is now in the second year of his new extension. That's around 20% of the cap. But his next contract is going to be the max. So those 3 guys are going to take up roughly most of your salary cap. Then you have those fill-in pieces. Steven Adams is on a nice deal as well. Marcus Smart, as you mentioned, around $19 million a year. Those guys take up a large chunk of the salary cap. You just don't have a lot of space left to go out and go get these other starting caliber players, and that's the situation that the Celtics are about to encounter. So I think Grant Williams ends up somewhere else next season.
Where would you like to see him? Where do you think he fits best out there?
Man, there are a lot of teams that could use him because his again, the versatility. I think there's more to his offensive game. When we watched him in school, we lauded the mid-range shooting and the ability to play in the post. And now with the Celtics, you saw him kind of extend his range to the three-point line and show off, his ability to stay in front of guys on defense and things like that. I think Houston makes a lot of sense.
Definitely.
I think that's one.
His former coach coaching there too.
Yeah, exactly. Houston is probably the 1A destination, I think, of right now for a guy like Grant Williams. I mean, depending on what type of moves, other teams can make, I think Sacramento, again, that's a team that's about to create some cap space. Sacramento makes a little bit of sense to me there because they need front court depth now. They have a nice little duo there with Keegan Murray and Sabonis, but they traded away Rashawn Holmes. They need some depth there. I think he's a guy that could add some versatility to what they like to do with Trey Lyles over there as well. But I think those 2 teams stand out to me, but Houston is definitely number 1.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring them up. That does make sense. I've looked at Indiana. They need a 4
Indiana?
bad.
Yeah.
I know they drafted one as well, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But Houston, if it does end up being a sign and trade, I do think that's a big reason the Celtics stacked up all those second-round picks to try to get something back for Grant. Could you get a Jayshawn Tate? It's a guy who fills a similar position there.
Exactly.
You know, wouldn't be playing if Grant does end up in Houston anyway, I'd imagine. So that would be intriguing to me, at least to fill Grant's spot on the roster. I think the Celtics do need to get something back for him. But that's another guy, like we talked about with Smart earlier. They'll miss that leadership. They'll miss that voice. They'll miss that presence, I think, that Grant brought to the locker room. I certainly will. These are the two guys I talk to the most, probably, Smart and Grant, heading out the door in this locker room, which is a bummer. But
good locker room guys for sure.
So he's DaMichael Cole. You can check him out on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Go subscribe to that if you want to get your Grizzlies fill. And, of course, you can read him at Memphis News as well. And he is at DaMichael C on Twitter. Both these teams in a similar spot, I think, from a free agent perspective. Friday, that's getting going. Mid-level, I think, is really, if anything, these two teams – big weapon to go out and get somebody. So I'm sure you've looked at the list of guys who could potentially be mid-level money in this market. Who sticks out most to you when it comes to teams that will be using that mid-level exception to add free agents?
Which players stick out or the teams?
Which players on the market?
Yeah, because certain guys you wonder how, like, if they, like Harrison Barnes is one that I don't think he'll be mid-level exception money, but it'll be interesting to see how the market plays out, and he has to end up accepting that because he played better than a mid-level exception player this past season. But that's one that stands out to me. I like specialists in that mid-level exception role. A guy like Matisse Thybulle, I think with the right team, excellent role for him. When he plays, he's one of the best defenders in the world, period. But he has to play. It has to be the right fit. It has to be the right team. It has to be a team that has a lot of shooting, a lot of offensive talent around him to really make that work. Matisse Thybulle is a guy that comes to mind. Karis LeVert is one that I really like. Karis LeVert has a lot of offensive game. He's a guy who can come off the bench for any team at the mid-level exception and really provide a jolt, some shot creativity to your second unit. So he's another guy that stands out to me. And then Bruce Brown, of course. Bruce Brown is a big one. I know Boston. I was saying, I know they're going wild over there. They're seeing him work out in Jason Tatum's shoes and all that good stuff.
Listen, that was my pick last year, and he went to Denver on mid-level money. I really wanted to see him in Boston. He had a tremendous year. He's probably earned himself some money here, at least from Denver, if they're going to try to keep him there. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who ultimately gets squeezed to that mid-level spot. Barnes is an interesting one. I think he'd be a great fit in Memphis. You know who I think is going to be a steal, and I do actually think is going to end up on mid-level money almost certainly because he didn't have the greatest year last year. Seth Curry. Quietly a free agent, went to Brooklyn in that Simmons deal. Didn't play a ton. But he was indispensable in Philly, and I almost wonder if he's going to end up back in Philly on a mid-level because that would bolster their lineup immensely. But he's a guy that I think could fit on any team, shooting the ball, handling the ball a little bit, runs the pick and roll well. I was baffled that Brooklyn didn't use him at all, and they're certainly not going to bring him back, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I know he dealt with some injury things and all that early in the season, but you figured with Kyrie and Katie over there, he was going to play a big role. But when the roster turnover and all that happened, I guess that explains why we didn't see much of him. But yeah, he's a good one. He's a really good one. He's gonna, wherever he goes, he's gonna make an impact.
All right, appreciate your time, DaMichael. Thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you again before long. I'm sure when Marcus Smart return happens next year, which is going to be a special night in Boston. And we'll see you out at Summer League as well. DaMichael's going to be out there. We'll be out there as well. And we'll catch you later this week with a free agency preview here on the Garden Report. Free agency getting going Friday, believe it or not. Grant Williams and many more hitting the market. And it's going to be that mad dash to sign these guys as it always is. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.